I have a special treat for you today. It is schizophrenia. Online political schizophrenia for your enjoyment. I think that Nick Fuentes has been solid, rock solid for a decade.
He is what they call an incel.
Nick Fuentes, are you in fact a Fed?
No.
Okay. I wouldn't date one of those young women if they were growing on my ass.
What do you think is happening here?
I think people are being driven insane by the internet. I think that, if you take a look at YouTube, the question is why?
We have Steven Crowder, Tim Pool, and Milo Yiannopoulos, blast from the past. Gay Trump supporter Milo Yiannopoulos, who claims he's not gay anymore, talking about the implosion of the right-wing political sphere. It should be schizophrenic. It should be fun. Let's get into it.
Who wrote on our YouTube channel, How to Not Conduct an Interview 101.
This is what legacy media is done. You can't compete. Look, you're still following the same format. And so there, accusing someone young of being racist is a win.
We had Milo Yiannopoulos on, which generated quite a bit of controversy, and I had people criticizing me for hosting him.
Nick is a kind of chameleonic character. I couldn't tell you an opinion, aside from hating Jews, that if he has on Tuesday, he will absolutely for sure still have on Thursday.
Call me what?
I don't think that's true at all. I think Nick's been incredibly consistent over the past decade, but that's all right.
You want, go down that rabbit hole, whatever.
Completely missed the mark for me.
The most damaging thing done, of course, was the murder of Charlie Kirk. And now the second most damaging thing we're looking at is Candace Owens burning down everything he built.
Charlie Kirk's friends and followers were united in grief and horror by his murder, but in the months that have followed, that unity has collapsed into a bruising and incessant battle over what they stand for and why. It's Israel v. Qatar, MAGA v. MIGA, Candace v. Crowder, Tucker v. Shapiro, grifters v. Groypers, and on it goes. One major flashpoint has been the conspiracies about Charlie Kirk's killer and allegations about Turning Point USA itself, which Charlie's widow, Erica, responded to earlier this week.
Come after me, call me names, I don't care. Call me what you want, go down that rabbit hole, whatever. But when you go after my family, my Turning Point USA family, my Charlie Kirk Show family, when you go after the people that I love, and you're making hundreds and thousands of dollars every single episode going after the people that I love because somehow they're in on this, no.
Well, one of the influential people with very strong views on this matter, among others, is Tim Pool, the CEO of Timcast Media, who joins me now. Tim, welcome back to Uncensored. We're going to come to a really appalling incident that happened at your home. You reported this yourself in a few moments. But first of all, what is going on here with Candace Owens and Erica Kirk is causing a lot of consternation to a lot of people. You finally, it looked like to me, had enough and went pretty nuclear about this. Why does it matter to you so much to do this?
Well, the simple answer is that there was a coalition that was built by many people with, this coalition had many different political views, but it largely coalesced around a populist pro-America movement. I myself grew up very liberal, very Democrat, and like many others, found ourselves more likely to vote Republican because we saw the Democratic Party as drifting away. One of the most powerful voices in uniting all of these forces was Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. I don't completely agree with everything Charlie said, nor Turning Point USA, but Charlie invited me and many others to debate those ideas. Even Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks was invited to come and speak at AmFest because Charlie understood only when we come together.
Sorry for interrupting. Ironside says, what do you think about renaming Thesis Ship Paradox to Leonard Skinner's Paradox to modernize it? Or the Beach Boy Paradox, by the way. Uncle Jesse from, what was that TV show with the Olsen twins? Family Matters? House Rules? I don't know whatever. That show. The Olsen twins, okay? John Stamos. John Stamos was the drummer for the Beach Boys, and the Beach Boys only have one remaining Beach Boy. Full House. There you go. I don't know why I couldn't pull it out. I have early onset dementia, so forgive me. But the point is that, like, the Beach Boys is the Beach Boy plus a bunch of people who know how to cover their music, including Uncle Jesse from Full House. So yeah, rename it the Leonard Skinner rename it the right concept, wrong demographic. Yeah, exactly. For Family Matters. But anyways, the point is, yes, I am all in favor of that. Addressing what Tim has said, though, I think that what frustrates me about Tim's position is I say that he is a part of the contrarian right. All right. And the contrarian right, in my opinion, don't have like some fundamental underlying political philosophy. They claim that they were former Democrats. They claim that they were former liberals. But there are things about liberalism and democracy that if you subscribe to those political ideologies should be fundamental to you that Donald Trump has violated. And so instead, what the contrarian right seems to be, in my opinion, is they just have this vague notion that the left has gone too far. And as a result, they need to yank the Overton window right. And so they have to criticize and punch left, and they have to sweep for the right. And that's what they do. And contradictions, hyperbole, lies of omission, lies of commission be damned. And unfortunately, that seems to be a pretty lucrative niche of we don't have any underlying principles. We just hate the left.
And have these conversations. Can we actually make this country better? Well, he was murdered, and it puts all of this coalition building in jeopardy. And this movement to try and help this country with not one singular political ideology, but many that overlap. And the most damaging thing done, of course, was the murder of Charlie Kirk. And now the second most damaging thing we're looking at is Candace Owens burning down everything he built, and now having the gall to go after his grieving widow and his children, indirectly threatening their livelihoods, what Charlie built. It's a bridge too far. She's said many things that were increasingly, let's just call it, unhinged. And then finally one day she said, pull your donations from this godforsaken organization, with a direct implication in her post saying that Charlie Kirk was betrayed by Turning Point USA, even saying in one clip that his friends would have had to have signed off on his murder. It seems like there is no depth too deep and no bridge too far for her to benefit her career and her show. She would even go after those who loved Charlie the most. And I have no problem with people questioning the official government narrative or what the FBI thinks, but claiming there's Egyptian planes flying around in Utah time, which he was incorrect about, claiming that these planes are landing at airports or black SUVs are pulling into federal buildings where it just so happens her lawyers also work. It has just come to the realm of nonsense. The U.S. military, she claims, is now involved in his murder. She has turned the very tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, and she has turned this political movement into a reality drama, true crime show where she treats us all like characters in a fictional show. And, I think it's just gone too far.
Yeah, she's lost touch with reality. Weirdly enough, I think that Tim, I'm just going to put it at 110 because I do kind of want to get through this content. It should be listenable and still pleasant to listen to. My frustration with Tim is that I feel like that part of the hyperbole, lies of omission, Trump sweeping, conspiracism, I feel like Tim has platformed that and played with that. So this is kind of like leopards getting their face. The members of the leopards eating faces party not believing, oh, well, the leopards are not going to eat my face, and then finally getting their faces eaten politically. I'm not going to lie. There's an element of schadenfreude here. Then Brandon responsibly and intelligently brings up, what if her lawyers are members of the CIA? Think about it. Also, I do want to shout out, I did set the goal. The goal is 10 super chats in the next 2 hours. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. Special shout out to Fell Runner for 2 super chats already, and Old School for a super chat kicking off the string. Oilers, if you would please oil if you have the capacity to do so. If you do not have the capacity to do so, do not worry about it. You guys have been very kind to the channel. And chippers, people who are capable of chipping in. If you have the ability to chip in, please do so. However, I also understand it's the holidays. So if you're tapped out, you're brokies, you're paying bills, you're buying Christmas presents, don't worry about it. We're just here to have a good time.
I'm due to have her on next week on Uncensored. I've interviewed her numerous times over the years and, get on with her perfectly well. But I had a big set to with her about the Brigitte Macron thing where I genuinely felt that she just completely concocted this whole narrative that Brigitte Macron was a man, and then built a whole kind of conspiracy theory story around it, and was doing it purely for attention, clicks, and money. And it ended up with us having a $300,000 bet to charity. My bet being that Brigitte Macron, who mothered 3 children, is a woman. But even if it's proven, because of course the Macrons are now suing her, even if they win, it seems to me that Candace has got herself into a place now with her surging following, that even if the Macrons win the case and they prove that Brigitte Macron is a woman, which she is, Candace will just claim another conspiracy theory. She'll probably say it wasn't Brigitte Macron who took the sex test or whatever it is they do to establish the truth. And so
Thank you to Melo D for the 2. Thank you to Keycode for the 5. Chip from Keycode and Blubstony from Melo D. That sounds mean, Melo D, but I accept your super chat. Thank you kindly.
in other words, there's almost no way to turn these taps off, right? If you're intent on monetizing conspiracy theories, particularly if you have concocted them, and I'm going to ask you directly on our next interview, are you just making this stuff up, right? Because that's what many people think. It's very hard to see how you stop it in the modern world.
I completely agree. And, as you mentioned at the beginning of this interview, the shooting that took place at my property, and this is not to shift down to me, but this makes a good example of what her audience is looking for. And
what happened? So just explain to people who don't know what happened to you.
So it was late Friday into Saturday morning. So this is between midnight and 1 a.m. A vehicle slowly approached our property here at Timcast and opened fire. It appears to have been driving just below this relatively low the speed limit. It slowly comes in line with one of our buildings, fires a shot, speeds up, lines itself up with our studio, fires 2 more shots. This took place between midnight and 1 a.m. Saturday morning. Our security company, our security guards immediately registered them as gunshots, called the local sheriff, the police. They came out, cleared the incident, took a report, and left. I learned about this at the time, but not entirely clear what had exactly happened. The next day, we reviewed security footage, and oh yeah, this vehicle pulled up. It fired these shots. We're pretty flustered. We're actually going to be leaving this location because even with security, a fence, a perimeter, these things are getting out of hand. Now, this happened. It's terrifying. Following this, Candace has been apparently accusing me of fabricating the whole thing. And a man on the internet, some random guy, calls the wrong police department, who says, we have no idea what you're talking about. It then goes viral among these people who follow Candace that the police said no such event happened and they have no idea what Tim Pool is talking about. And they say that proves it. However, journalist Cameron Higby then contacted the correct department who said, yes, we have this police report on file. This happened. We came out, we cleared, et cetera. And then they said, Cam is now lying. So even when he shows the phone call where they say, yep, this actually happened, they say he's lying. Now we have TMZ confirming the police report in question, and they're still saying I'm lying. So a random guy calling the wrong police department proves.
Guys, so you guys are skeptical. Fellrunner says, what a lying piece of trash. Release the video evidence. Did anyone with the Chicken City VOD capture the gunshots? I'm not buying it. I bet someone's car backfired. I'm still waiting on the police report. Imagine having a security team but no cameras. Well, he's talking about cameras, Cobalt. Listen, I think it's possible. All right. I wasn't there. I would want to try to find the bullet holes. So for instance, like if they're lining up on the property, because the truth is that with Tim's property, I've been there twice, that he does have a perimeter. He does have a high gate. He does have this. He does have that. But most of the buildings are on the front end of the property. So the commercial building, the front house, I suppose, the homeowner's side of it, they're all towards the front of the property. And so as a result, I actually think that you could fire into the property and strike the buildings relatively easily. The thing is, I think they would have hit. And so if they would have hit, then law enforcement and or Tim's security team should be able to take photos and amend the police report and provide photos that it was actually struck. And there should be dime-sized to quarter-sized holes in the side of the building. The skate park is a part of the commercial building. I'm not trying to like schizo out and give you guys like too many details. That way, like if there's a schizo in my audience who wants to use what I'm talking about for intel. But effectively, there's a outbuilding that's by the road. The outbuilding has and it's basically like, it looks like a 1,500 to 2,000, well, actually probably 2,000 square foot, 2-story house. And that 2-story house has a fence with it, and there's an electrified gate, and there's people who look like they stay there 24/7, right? I'm assuming those are the security people that Tim is talking about. You drive in, and again, not trying to be too descriptive, but there is a house on the property, but it's further back. And then there's a commercial building, and it looks like a blue Intel is appreciated. Shut up. So there's a blue commercial building, and the commercial building, the front half of it is a skate park. So there's ramps and there's a drop off, and it actually looked really cool. It looks like they put a lot of work into it, and it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. Now in the commercial building, there's the back like third of it, I suppose. And the back third of it has a pantry, and it has a hangout area that shut up. It has a hangout area, and it has an upstairs area, and it has a bathroom, and it has the studio itself. And the studio itself is very, very, very nice. You can tell that they put a lot of time, love, and effort into it. My thing with what Tim is saying, which somebody mentioned in chat, is that he's saying that it's going to cost millions of dollars in order to do security. And as a result, they can't afford that expense. And so they don't know if they're continuing the show. I think they're over egging the pudding. I think they're exaggerating their position in order to gain sympathy with the audience so they get additional funding. Where's the security room? How about the electric? But the point is that realistically, I think that they could get 3 guys who are fans of the show, who are former veterans, who are, making 60 grand a year, 50 grand a year, something like that. And so it's $200,000. Have them wear, when they're on shift, have them wear like frangible soft armor, like soft armor plates. Have you guys ever seen this? I'm sorry, I'm yapping for too long, and I know I'm ruining the momentum. I promise I'll get back to it. But the point is that you could get these guys Glock pistols, AR-15s, and then there's something called flexible rifle armor. Okay. And flexible rifle armor is soft armor that is rifle capable. So effectively what they did is they did Dragon Scale, but they made Dragon Scale actually work and be light. And so the FRAS system, number one, if Tim's a multimillionaire, he should just have FRAS for himself. Phil Labonte is the lead singer of All That Remains, and he works for Tim Pool as well, or works with Tim Pool. He should have FRAS armor. He's also a gun enthusiast. So the point is that you could hire 3 guys and have 24/7 security, and then you could basically have a guy who's on the job where 8 hours a day, he is like 8 hours a day, he's there. He's doing the security job. He's wearing his FRAS. He has a pistol on his hip. He's armed security for the property. He has a go-kart. And if something happens, it's his job to check it out. And then you could have a guy on standby. So he's awake. He can, do his laundry. He can do his chores. He can watch TV. He can play video games. But basically, he's on standby as a QRF. So quick reaction force. So if something pops off, he can throw on his armor and back up the guy who's on the property. Then you can have a third guy who's sleeping. And I guarantee you that if you were effectively giving these guys $60K a year and free room, meaning that they didn't have to pay rent to stay on the property, you could find 3 military veterans who are fans of the show, who would be interested in providing around the clock security. So yeah, and add a dog to it, right? Yeah, get a livestock dog. Yeah, absolutely. Get a those like Caucasian shepherds. Have you guys ever seen these guys? Caucasian shepherds. These guys, now they're expensive. These guys are probably like $3,000 to $10,000. But if you got like 2 of these guys, now apparently the way that the shepherds work is that they're working dogs, so they don't even like being inside. They like being outside. They like minding livestock. And when they go to sleep, they sleep with the livestock, but they kind of have like their ear out for anything creepy. And then they will alert you if something creepy is going on. So anyways, the whole point of this is that, sorry for talking for so long, but I do hope you guys find this interesting. I think Tim could do what is required in order to protect his property for maybe an investment of $500,000, but then an ongoing expense of $200,000, and he could do it. And I think considering he probably makes 6 figures in a month, if he budgeted properly, I think he could do it. And him saying like, oh, it's going to cost millions of dollars per year. No, it doesn't. Not in my opinion, anyways.
I lied, and an actual statement from the police saying, yes, I filed this, our security company filed this report, and another journalist verifying it, 2 journalists, 3 actually, that's never enough for them. So we did, for on the uncensored portion of the show last night, play some of the audio of the shooting. But the reason we can't release the footage is that it shows the layout of our property, the location of our security implementations, potentially personnel, and that would compromise our already compromised security. So what I've said is perhaps once we are officially out of here, which may be in about a week or so, then upon reviewing it with security, we will release that footage. But we have already released audio for those. Her audience doesn't care. They want to believe the drama reality that
Grassroots says having a 9-foot tall friend named Tiny. Listen, they could hire Silver. Sometimes you guys will see a chatter. He only pops in every now and then. Bibliolife, Silver. Silver's been with the channel since we had like 3,000 subscribers. Silver is 8 feet tall. So yeah, hire Silver, nickname him Tiny.
Israel is paying everybody, that I'm secretly funded by insert random deep state organization, because we are characters in a drama she is producing, a reality TV show, a whodunit, and stay tuned for the next episode to see what comes next.
I mean, I don't listen. Until I talk to her myself, I'll hold my fire about the credibility of any of the stuff she's coming out with at the moment. I certainly have no reason to disbelieve you. I messaged you on X when I read what had happened, because I thought it was appalling. Particularly appalling in light of what happened to Charlie Kirk. You know, if this carries on, if public figures in this space of talking about politics and issues in the news and so on become legitimate targets in people's eyes for assassination, then it's hard to think of a worse suppression of free speech and democratic society. What do you think is happening here?
I think people are being driven insane by the internet. I think that, you know, if you take a look at YouTube, the question is, why has YouTube announced they were banning flat earthers, not necessarily banning, but they were going to suppress this kind of conspiracy content that claims there's an ice wall surrounding the inner continents or whatever. There's a flat earth. They're going to suppress climate denial and all of these things. And there's a question over where that line of free speech is and when you should be allowed to talk about conspiracies. But they banned Alex Jones, they banned Nick Fuentes, and one could make the argument that these individuals may have been more hateful, and that was why. The question becomes, why is Candace Owens, with all of her theories on the front page, propped up, promoted to many individuals, despite her saying things like she's not a flat earther or a round earther, she's left the cult of science, saying things like Bridget McCrone is a man. These things are outlandish, but for some reason, YouTube and many other platforms seem to be completely okay with what she's doing, not okay with what others are doing. This, I think, it's bringing people to a state.
Because they like money. As do I. So quick shout out. Thank you to the 2 people who have already super chatted. Thank you to the 5 people who have super chatted in general. Key Code, Melody, Fellrunner, Old School, and Fellrunner again. Thank you for the super chats. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. I do have a goal of 10 super chats over the course of the next 2 hours. Josh CFC in chat says, did you read what Trump said about Rob Reiner? Absolutely, I did. It is repulsive. It is disgusting. I can't wait for him to be a lame duck. I'm going to share something real quick, and I want to see your response in chat. So I love engaging with you guys. I also love engaging with the content. I love reacting. I love our ADD stuff, all that kind of stuff. But I also want to give you a pleasant listening experience. And I think I want to start to give the VOD viewers, even though, let me go ahead and spit on the ground for the VOD viewers. VOD viewers, I want to give the VOD viewers a pleasant listening experience as well. So I'm going to ask for your permission, but I also want feedback on it. Should I interrupt less? Should I only react to maybe 1 or 2 chats and then keep the content flowing, or should I keep streaming the way that I'm streaming? Because I'll tell you the problem. You guys are incredibly generous, and you guys make the stream worth it pretty much every single time I go live. However, VODs I notice are really hit or really miss. And so I kind of just want to check in and see if, like, well, maybe by trying to improve the listening experience for the VOD viewers, I also improve your streaming experience. But I don't want to ignore the chat either. So you guys tell me if we should follow a formulaic feedback loop with the content. So yeah, Josh CFC says, I appreciate the support. Well, then that's unfortunately, that just encourages me to behave poorly and just go on to autistic ADD rants. Grasser says, it's a statistical fact that 70% of the ambient air content in West Virginia is bullets. True. Well, QC John says, no, absolutely no changes whatsoever. VOD viewers are just second-class citizens. Ick. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Listen, VOD viewers, I hate to say it. You're getting overruled by live chat. They actually don't like you. All right. I guess we're just interacting. We're going on ADD autistic rants until the sun explodes. All right. Fair enough.
Of paranoid delusions. We had a show on my Culture War podcast with some psychologists and psychiatrists, and I asked them, we understand that there could be mental illnesses, that someone's brain is not firing properly, and thus they're going to believe things or see things that aren't there. But what do you call it when someone comes to believe a false version of reality because they were convinced of it by writings, literature, movies, or otherwise? And they said that's just still paranoid delusions. There are now people that believe the French legionnaires, the French Foreign Legion, Israel, and the U.S. military have a hit squad out, and they're going to take out prominent personalities, and it's just become a paranoid delusional state. Egyptian planes around every corner. This is driving people to a state of violence. And it's not just this. There's the general political disagreement and hyperpolarization, but this is a very serious component of it. I don't know if there's an answer. I'm not saying anyone should be censored or banned. I think the answer is sunlight is the best disinfectant. And more people are coming out and criticizing the absurdities of what Candace O has been saying. And I think that actually may end up being the best disinfectant.
Tim, you've said on your podcast, Timcast, that the attacks on you, actual shooting that occurred, that because of the extra security costs you're having to take on just to protect yourself and your family and your employees, that this could end your business.
Which, by the way, I'm just, like I said, we went on autistic rant earlier. I think that's total bullshit. Mr. Birian, I want to thank you for the super chat and shout out Birian, Key Code, Melody, Fell Runner, Old School Fell Runner. Thank you for the support. And also, apparently, VOD viewers can suck a dick because was it conservative liberalism? I lost the chat, but somebody said, I was a VOD viewer once. Now Connor streams during the day. If you want to catch the stream, just get a different job. I agree with this.
So I didn't say that it would end the full business outright. We have several shows. We have other shows that are not hosted by myself. The issue is that to host a show where we bring people in every day, we give our address 4 or 5 times to various assistants and people, makes it relatively easy for people to figure out where we are. And then you have the general security costs of keeping bad people out. We've had run-ins with creepos. We've had stalkers. A man approached the property once saying he was sent by God to speak to me. And we have to pay men to come out here with guns and make sure these people don't get in. Now we have extra added costs following the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which means as a normal media business, we have advertisements, we have sponsors, we have paying members, and we do very, very well, even with our general security costs. Now we have to reassess. Can we do the show here if they're opening fire on us? How do we secure against things like drive-by shootings? And there's actually no way you can unless you restructure where you're doing work out of. One recommendation was a penthouse in, say, somewhere in Florida or something like that, because then no one can get in there. No one can actually shoot at you. The issue now is, following the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the credible death threats that we have received, we are looking at a new artificial cost to do business, and that is high-profile security. at our location. This can cost upwards of $2 to $6 million per year, depending on how extensive. I mean, I believe you are.
Or you could just take the risk. That's another option. Dude, I'm not gonna lie, this is rubbing me wrong. The reason why this is rubbing me wrong is that, yeah, Ray Sunlight sounds like he's living in Compton. He's in eastern West Virginia. Okay, yeah, there's homeless people, but it's rural enough that you don't have a lot of like schizos just walking around because it's very rural. But anyways, the reason why I'm frustrated with what he's saying is like, or you could just take the risk. Okay, you're a multimillionaire. You own a property that has multi-use. It's a multi-use property. You're a political commentator. You've been saying for a decade that we're on the precipice of civil war. Guys, this is so serious. The American population is hell-bent on destruction. That we are divided into such binary tribes that descriptively, bear in mind, Tim Pool is not egging on the civil war for metrics at all. He doesn't hyperbolize where America is as a country in order to get views at all. He's not a doomsday prophet at all. He's just being descriptive about what's going on. Okay. And so him being descriptive, this is one of the most important political moments in American life. And yet he thinks that he can mitigate or eliminate risk. If you wanted to eliminate or mitigate risk, you shouldn't be talking about politics. Politics is power. Politics is who wields power and how. If you're not interested in risk, you shouldn't be involved in politics. K for 10 Canadians says, I'm just going to say, I want you to grow your audience and appeal, so I think doing a segment for VOD would benefit you. If we get you chatting with us 70% of the time, no one will complain. Okay. Well, I do parasocially love you guys, and I do appreciate it. And I'll try to find a balance where hopefully you don't even notice the balance. Okay. I'm going to explain this to you, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. When I check out the most successful VOD streamers who I watch, okay, what they do is they're typically reacting to the content. And once every 3 to 5 minutes, they pause the content. They react to the content specifically, and they largely ignore chat unless a chatter says something particularly funny. And they don't even say their name. Like, they don't even say their name. They just go, oh, ha, 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 ha. And then they repeat what the chatter said. Those are the most successful VODs that I watch consistently. Live streamers, I think, make a lot of money. Just as an example, we only have 100 people, but if I was a server working at a restaurant, I would be ecstatic with the past 90 minutes of work. Okay. And all I've done is I've hung out with and bullshitted with you guys. So it's not a big deal one way or the other. However, I do want to balance these two things where VOD viewers don't feel like they're totally excluded from our community, because effectively all I'm doing is I'm autistically reacting to chat with ADHD while content plays in the background. I don't think the VOD viewers are enjoying that content, and that's why VODs are hit or miss. Whereas I think striking the balance between the two is probably where we need to land, but I don't want to neglect you guys either. So I just don't want to yank it too far in one direction, because you guys are helping me. You're helping me do this. So anyways, we'll try to find the balance.
We know this. I imagine you deal with it similarly. And it was reported that Barry Weiss has to spend, $10,000 per day for her bodyguards. As a media business, it's totally fine. We can handle the cost of cameras and staff.
Which also she could just accept risk. 365 times 10. What is that? 3,650,000. Is that bullshit? That sounds like bullshit. Maybe she doesn't have her bodyguards with her all the time, but 10,000 times 365. Yeah, that's 3,650,000. Hey, MSNBC. I'll be pro-Jewish for 90% less than Barry Weiss security costs. All right, Jesus Christ.
And doing the show, and we all do fairly well. But now you add on the need for 24/7 bodyguards and multiple bodyguards, and that's money we don't have. So this means that Timcast IRL, our nightly show with guests who physically enter the property, we may have to reassess and restructure. That could mean we can't afford to do business this way. My family can't afford this. And especially with the increase in political violence going into a midterm year, we have to reassess the most appropriate way for me to do shows, which means maybe I go into more of a solo slot like I do in my mornings, and we don't do shows that are physical. That's a possibility. We're also having emergency meetings with our partners to figure out a way to, we're looking at economies of scale. Where can we bring in all the personnel to a single location so the cost of security is spread out among 10 people instead of one person, and then we can continue to work. So hopefully it doesn't come to any immediate termination or suspension of Teamcast IRL, but that may be the case. We can't handle death threats that turn into physical manifestations, actual shots fired at our property.
No, it's horrific. Absolutely horrific, and it shouldn't be happening. And like you say, this has real-time consequences for people in terms of protection and security and all the rest of it. And not just for you, for your guests, everybody involved. It's outrageous. And for people to trivialize that or doubt it or whatever it may be, just compounds the problem, right? And it just fuels what I think is an increasingly big problem in America of just deliberate disinformation that's being spewed out for money.
I would encourage doubt of all people, of me or of anybody else. The issue is it's not actually doubt. It is zealotry.
Right.
I mean, Andy No, great journalist, got a press release from the sheriff's department where they confirmed that our security called in the reports of shots fired, that a gray sedan had been circling the property. In all fairness, they said that we didn't turn over surveillance footage, so they couldn't substantiate the claims, but the report did happen. We played the audio on our show last night. We don't want to release the footage because it compromises the location of our cameras, security personnel. It shows the layout of the property, which would dramatically worsen an already bad situation. But it's not about doubt. It's about there's no amount of evidence that they are willing to accept because it is cult-like zealotry among people who don't want to believe this is reality.
Once again, my frustration with this is that, and by the way, like, you know, Phil, I think is actually a guy who's interested at least in his perception of reality. I think we disagree on what reality is, Phil Labonte and I. Tim, I think is playing a different game where I think he knows where the hyperbole is, and I think he knows where the audience is going to react positively. But I have to say, there's an element of schadenfreude here where it's like, dude, you hung out with schizos the entire time. You've platformed Jack Posobiec. You've platformed Candace Owens. You've platformed Romy Millennial. You've platformed all these people who routinely traffic in lies of commission and omission. And most of the time, you're not calling them out. You're playing buddy-buddy. You're being boys. Dude, as a matter of fact, one of the things that drives me crazy, so Lauren Chen, roaming millennial, the girl who ran Tenet Media and took $800,000 so she in turn could give millions of dollars to Tim Pool and Benny Johnson and Dave Rubin and to a lesser degree Lauren Southern. So yeah, roaming millennial. Yeah, I knew her by her old name. I actually thought that roaming millennial was a decent political commentator. I thought she was like a smart and earnest person. When she turned into Lauren Chen, ironically, when she started going by her real name, she became a bigger piece of shit. But Lauren Chen was Chinovsky. Oh shit. Is it for oh, okay. I see what you did. Josh. But Lauren Chen posted the Stanford University study saying that, oh yeah, the vaccine can have negative health consequences, including injury and death. And she was like, oh, see, all the schizo conspiracy theorists were right. When is your family going to apologize to you for abusing you out of society? And then like, she didn't read the study because the Stanford people, to their discredit, posted a spicy title effectively saying like, yes, the COVID vaccine can cause injury and death. But then if you look at the study itself and the study's author says COVID is still much worse and effectively has like a 10 times injury and death rate compared to the vaccine. And then the vaccine also has like a correlated improvement in, health outcomes. So once again, she's just like lying to her audience or being willfully stupid for money. Come on, Connor, he's lying. Well, I mean, we're talking about Lauren. So are you talking about Tim Pool or are you talking about Lauren Chen? Because Lauren Chen is a woman. Anyways, back to it.
Tim, I just want to ask you, just before I let you go, just because you've had an experience with this, I just interviewed Nick Fuentes and it blew up massively online. I'm not going to ask you about the interview. I just want to ask you one question, because you interviewed him with Ye, and they walked out and so on. This debate about whether you should platform, whether I should platform people like Fuentes, what do you think about that?
We had Milo Yiannopoulos on, which generated quite a bit of controversy, and I had people criticizing me for hosting him. I think it's sunlight being the best disinfectant. We have to be robust and prepare in our
Honestly, I can't wait for the Milo. I can't wait for the Milo segment.
ideas and be prepared for these debates. I actually think you did it is good work that you've done in hosting Nick Fuentes. I think people should interview and challenge him. And I know that you're facing, I don't know what the right word is for it, but people are certainly coming after you now in a negative way because you are willing to do so. I think Steven Crowder did a good job. If you want to interview Candace, Tucker, Milo, Nick, anybody, I think it's appropriate, and this is what we should be doing with these debates and conversations. So I applaud you for doing so.
But you need to challenge them, and you also need to understand their rhetoric. And what I would say when it came to the Nick Fuentes interview, once again, we did watch this on the stream. Nick was off balance and out of pace for the first third, where Piers Morgan was just showing clip after clip after clip after clip of him saying spicy, terrible things. But then the second that Piers Morgan didn't understand or willfully misunderstood per capita, Nick became confident. And as a result, Nick regained his momentum, started joking, started being fun, started being charismatic. And I think he controlled the last 2/3 of the conversation. So I actually think Piers Morgan kind of did a bad job. I also think that in reference to Crowder, because we watched that as well, Crowder, the first third of it was actually terrible. It was like buddy and giving him excuses and giving him outs. That way, any spicy thing that he said in the past, he could just dismiss his jokes, or he could just say like, no, I don't believe the bad thing that I said. The first third of the Crowder interview was terrible, but at least for the hour or so that we watched, Crowder had excellent follow-up questions in the second half of what we watched, where he was saying, you say this is your ideology. What do you mean by it? Here's what people are worried about. What do you want? And he actually gave him, in my opinion, enough rope with which Nick will either bring himself up or hang himself. Project Socio, aka Ali, says, you mean the you don't get no pussy guy lost the debate? Yeah, the last third of the debate, Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan was like, you're a virgin, you're a loser, virgin. And that's like that's all he had to say to Nick Fuentes. That was kind of wild.
Tipple, good to talk to you, and it's very sobering what's been happening to you, and I hope they get to the bottom of who was doing it, and I hope that...
All right, fast forwarding to Milo.
Imagine the scene, a veteran TV host causing outrage by interviewing a rising alt-right star who's facing accusations of racism, anti-Semitism, and much more besides. Yes, Bill Maher interviewed Milo Yiannopoulos almost 9 years ago. And some of those who despair at the remain...
Wow, 9 years ago. I am the Saving Private Ryan meme. If you will consult your screen. Saving Private Ryan aging meme. This is me, bro. When he just said 9 years ago. 9 years ago. That is effing brutal. Rob with the W says, oh, smack. Glad to be here, lads and lassies. How's chat in the stream? We're doing great. Quick reminder before we continue, like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if we got them, memberships if you got them. Thank you to the 7 people who have already donated so far. We are on a goal of 10 super chats over 2 hours. We are currently at 4 super chats out of 10 super chats. If you got a little money burning a hole in your pocket, if you're an oiler and you want to oil, or you're a chipper and you want to chip, never required, always appreciated. Let's go.
Mainstream rise of Nick Fuentes and his followers believe a lot of this all started back then. Well, Milo Yiannopoulos joins me now. Welcome to Uncensored.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I remember the Bill Maher thing. I remember the fallout from that. Now, when you look back at that, Milo, do you when you see what's happening with Nick Fuentes, do you feel that you were like at the start of all this, that you were partly responsible for all this? How do you feel about it?
I certainly feel as though it looks a little similar to when I was speaking at Berkeley and causing, giving
Samson, thank you for the 5.
journalists conniptions. But I think there's something very distinctly different about me and somebody like Nick Fuentes. We've moved quite dramatically in America toward a sort of, I would call it something like an epistemological crisis. 10 years ago, we had positions. There were people with intellectual hinterlands who had opinions and who were consistent in their political beliefs. I don't think Nick Fuentes really believes in anything at all. And I think it's partly a result of the press spinning out of control to attack Donald Trump. There are all kinds of etiologies for it. But I think it's quite a different moment we're experiencing now. And I think he's quite a different phenomenon.
I mean,
Guys, I hate to be mean about it. I'm really not trying to kick Milo while he's down. But it does look, in my opinion, over the past 10 years, it does look like maybe he's used substances too much. He looks a little bit out of it. He looks a little bit like anxious and I don't know, like off. And then it also looks like, I'm again not trying to be mean. If you're cross-eyed, I've known some beautiful cross-eyed people. He looks a little bit cross-eyed. It's kind of, oh my God, like I don't know, man. Like 10 years ago, don't you kind of remember like a jubilant Milo? Oh, also, doesn't he have a brain tumor now? I think he announced on Twitter that he had a brain tumor, so maybe that could be part of it. Maybe he feels like shit because he has a brain tumor. But man, this is not the extreme, happy, go lucky, crazy, flamboyant, weird, fun, hyperbolic guy that I remember from 10 years ago. This is actually kind of brutal. Yeah, dude, you need to. You're right. Kay says, if vulgarly, Kay says women are no good for him. I agree. Milo needs to go back to being gay. Weld with the 20. Take my money in celebration that the Kansas City Swifties will not be in the NFL playoffs for the first time since 2014. Grill gods do answer prayers. Grill Shallah and Allah barbecue. Well, QC John, I did lead the morning prayer since I didn't see you very early in the morning. Man, this is kind of brutal. Let's let it flow, though.
I interviewed him at length and put to him a number of more controversial things that he said. He doubled down on most of it. He unashamedly said he was racist. He explained why he was racist in a very racist manner. He was blatantly misogynist and
Can I draw the Laurens real quick? So somebody said Lauren Eastern, if you will. Lauren Southern. Lauren Eastern is a very close second. I want to show you the Laurens, okay? Because in the Destiny orbit, there have been many Laurens. There's Lauren De Laguna, there's Lauren Southern, there's Lauren Eastern, which is Lauren Chen. And then we're still kind of looking for a Lauren Northern. Now, Lauren Southern lives in Canada, so technically she could be Lauren Northern. So if we found a Hispanic Lauren who became a part of the Destiny orbit, then we would make Lauren Southern Lauren Northern. And then if we found a Canadian or Midwestern Lauren, then no, we have a Lauren Western. Lauren Western is Lauren De Laguna. She's from Laguna Beach. So Lauren De Laguna is Lauren Western. So we need a Lauren Southern or we need a Lauren Northern. We need one of them. And Destiny fumbled all of them. Brutal. But I'm going to draw this because I think it's important.
Ashamedly so. He kind of hedged round about Holocaust denial, but I suspect, as some people have said since, he was playing a sort of arch satirical game with me about that, so that he could say later he didn't really mean it. How much of what is going on with him is performative? How much of it, you used to hang out with him and Ye and others. How much of it is real? How much does he really believe?
Well, I tried to befriend Nick because I wondered if there was anything to save there. And so I became, I suppose, something like a mentor to him for a couple of years. And it turned out that there really wasn't. He's a person who just wants to hurt people. And I don't I couldn't find, it was like nailing jelly to the wall. I couldn't find any consistent or substantive kind of core to him in any way. I mean, Nick is a kind of chameleonic character in media. On one day, he'll go on a podcast hosted by an African American who has rappers on, and he'll say, "Oh, I love immigrants. I know illegal immigrants. No, they're not bad people." And then he'll come on with you, where he feels he's on surer ground, and he'll sort of do the smirking, double down kind of mischievous routine. He's a very gifted speaker. He's obviously got very high verbal IQ. He's a very charismatic person. Having observed him and having known him for a little while and been on the receiving end of some of his worst behavior, he's something distinctively different, as I mentioned before, from the provocateurs of a decade ago and the decades before that, in that he is, I think, emblematic of Gen Z, really, in being quite a pure and sort of terrifyingly pure nihilist. And really, I couldn't tell you an opinion aside from hating Jews, that if he has on Tuesday, he will absolutely for sure still have on Thursday.
See, I don't find that to be the case. I'm going to defend Nick Fuentes' honor. God help me a little bit. I think that Nick Fuentes has been solid, rock solid for a decade in Christian nationalism, national conservatism as a philosophy, paleo-conservatism as a philosophy, where effectively he's identified Christians, and specifically white Christians, as the in-group. And then what he's waffled on is, do we need to completely resegregate? Do we need to completely, become a separate tribe? Do we need to be effectively like Christian nationalist separatists within the United States of America? Or can we create these ethno-religious enclaves, effectively resegregation, and then from that resegregationist framework, negotiate some kind of power sharing agreement where white Northern European Christians are the in-group power group? And if you look at all of his rhetoric, I would actually find, I can't think of a single time that I've seen him really err away from that. And when he's being more diplomatic with Sneeko, or being more diplomatic with the podcast that's hosted by that hip hop guy, the guy who cucked out his wife, I forget what that guy's name. Jump 22 Jump Street. So anyways, the point is that I actually have not found Nick to be that inconsistent ideologically. He might be rhetorically fluid, but Adam 22. Yes, Adam 22 Jump Street, the movie. So yeah, I haven't found him to be, he was close enough, says Sen Patriarch. I find him to be rhetorically fluid, but not ideologically fluid. I actually don't agree with Milo's assessment so far. 21 Savage, yes.
And yeah, that can't be a good thing.
I mean, you mentioned that you're the son of a woman, your mother, who was born in Germany, who was Jewish. I suppose it begs the question, knowing how apparently anti-Semitic he is. I mean, he's constantly attacking Jews, constantly accusing Jews of running the world in a malevolent way and so on. Why would you want to hang around with someone like him? And indeed, Ye, for that matter, who then began spewing anti-Semitic content.
Well, Ye is in a completely different category. I mean, Ye is a generational, a genius. I mean, he can speak for himself. He doesn't need me to speak for him. These two people are in completely different categories. I think that maybe to British ears, some of the discourse in America can sound really just baffling and horrifying and hateful. And it's important to understand what's really going on. Whereas 10 years ago, we were sort of saying things to be mischievous and naughty, provocative, and to push the boundaries, that now has sort of evolved into a less ironic kind of I guess you call it an equal opportunities loathing for everybody in the forms of people like Nick Fuentes. But I got to say, I don't have that much of a problem with a lot of what he says when he's talking about. I mean, when you were sort of incredulous about his misogyny, I felt it actually was a little unfair to him because, 10 years ago we were talking about how men were getting left behind, how women were overtaking them at university, how the world had suddenly, bafflingly, and very, very abruptly become quite a hostile place to be a man. That situation has not gotten better, and so I think his generation's hostility toward women is, lamentable but very understandable. And when he comes to talk about what he would call Jewish power, there is a discussion to be had there that has not been had for a very long time because people have been, spooked or intimidated or threatened into silence because of an event 75, 80 years ago, which has been, weaponized against, I think, legitimate debate about, for instance, what the state of Israel is up to. I think it's really good. I mean, and I got to tell you, I really give you a lot of credit for breaking with the establishment on Israel, and coming up with the opinion that you have, which I think is the correct one. But it was very difficult up until about 5 years ago to speak plainly and honestly about some of the most appalling behavior of the Israeli state, because you knew what was going to happen. You knew what you were going to get called. And I do think there's some value to having a character like Nick. I'm not a fan of Nick's, but I do at least see some.
Okay, for those of you who were or were not paying attention to your screen, it's like Avatar: The Last Airbender, okay? Where there's the nation, there's the Eastern, the Northern, and the Western nations. And yet, we have not seen a representative from the Southern nation in the Lauren category within the online political sphere. And so we have Lauren Eastern, who is Chen, Lauren De Laguna, who is from Laguna Beach, aka the West Coast of the United States. She is the Western Lauren. We have Lauren Southern, who comes from Canada, who therefore is Lauren Northern. So if we get another Canadian Lauren, then we need, Lauren Al-Gaib. So we need one more in online politics in order to unite the nations. Oh, Sen Patriarch. Yeah, that was bananas. Yes. The prophesied Lauren Algai.
Positive benefit in, if you like, the wreckage he's left behind.
But the problem is that his groypers, his fan club.
Okay, Horse God is saying Laura Trump, but isn't Laura Trump from New York? I don't know if that counts. She's also not. She might be in the mainstream politics, but she's not in the alternative political scene. I want somebody who's in alt politics, alt online politics. Horse God.
All the abuse that's spewed my way since I did the interview was entirely predictable. But I've been really struck, not just by how blatantly misogynist and violent it is about women, and I don't really accept the defense that, well, men have been treated badly. I've been leading the charge for young men to be treated.
Ooh. Hold on. No. It's Laura Loomer, right?
Better for.
It's Laura, Laura. I'll count it if you guys want me to count it. Lauren Boebert. Yeah, but she's like, that's Lauren Western as well. It's Laura, not Lauren. I'll think about it.
For the man bashing to stop and so on. It doesn't mean at the same time you have to just belittle and demean women, or say they shouldn't be allowed to vote, or shouldn't be allowed a job, or they're going to get old and fat and ugly and they're all annoying. I mean, that's not about defending the male position. It's about just demeaning and belittling and attacking women, which is to me grotesque. But I think in terms of it
does look ugly, but you have to understand it in the context of a very heavily feminized society. I mean, we have speech codes in the workplace. We have exams rewritten to favor girls. I mean, it's not just that women are pulling ahead in university. I mean, women really have engineered the world against men. And I'm not saying that I like the tone that some of these Zoomers take, but do I understand it? I sure do. I really do understand. A 22-year-old guy today has no realistic prospect of building a life for himself. And no,
guys, and I'm just going to tell you, this sounds like bullshit to me. It's hard, okay? It's hard to be a young man in today's society. It's hard to come up during COVID. It's hard where so much of socialization is happening on the internet. And if you engage in the wrong way, you might be, destroyed on social media or whatever. It's hard to go into third spaces or find worthwhile third spaces where you can meet a wife or a girlfriend. It's hard to have enough money to afford to routinely go to third spaces in order to find your wife or girlfriend. It's not impossible. It's difficult. And guess what? Your great grandfather was wrestling saber-toothed tigers. Your great grandfather was crossing the Atlantic Ocean in wooden boats. Your great grandfather was dying of dysentery and avoiding Mongolian raids where people were getting like murdered and raped. Listen, it's hard to be a young man, but it's always been hard to be a young man. And also, you're still living in one of the most materially successful times in life. And so you have to find your own path. Okay. You're going to have to find a job that you like. You're going to have to find a job that pays your bills. You're going to have to find your wife or girlfriend in a weird third space that you can actually afford to be in. And you're going to have to build your life, and it's going to take effort and intention. But guess what? Life takes effort. Life takes intention. Sitting inside your room, super chatting me all day is not going to get you married. Okay. You might be able to hang out with your boys. You might be able to have fun and chat. You might be able to, have a good time, this, that, the other. But I am not going to find your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend for you. You will have to do that yourself. My apologies that I can't help you in that regard.
Path to being a patriarch, no path to being a husband and father that he can plausibly see. So they're dropping out, they're getting hostile, they're getting bitter. Do I get it? I'll be honest with you, I do. I do understand it.
And what about his racism? He just admitted, yeah, I'm a racist, and then explain why. He doesn't want to be walking around near black people and so on. I mean, he articulated perfectly what it is to be a racist, where you want to be away from.
Dude, what if somebody says, Eric Dom says, I mean, he had a near Lauren meetup in Austin, so not sure he fumbled them. Dude, what if Lauren Southern and Lauren Chen, because they are friends or were friends, what if they were hanging out together in Austin, Texas, and then Destiny happened to be there, and then Lauren Chen, Lauren Southern, and Lauren De Laguna were in the same spot at the same time? And then if they did like a Dragon Ball Z like fusing thing, what if they went like Super Saiyan and then that like formed, the true Lauren Southern?
But don't you think everyone feels a little bit? Don't you think everyone feels just slightly like that? Maybe he's an extreme case in the wake of George Floyd, and perhaps their frustration is with the white liberals that made it happen, or whatever. But I mean, there is a phrase. I hope it's okay that I use a safer version of the word. There's a phrase in America at the moment, Negro fatigue, and it is used to describe people just being sick of hearing about black people this, black people that, black people complaining in the wake of George Floyd, which was just the most grotesque absurdity and an offense to common sense and to decency.
Do you think it's acceptable? Do you think it's acceptable and decent?
Well, dude, this is where how is Milo trying to have his cake and eat it too? Because he literally just said N-word fatigue. Now he didn't say ER, he said RO, which is kind of crazy. But he was describing it as bad, which is interesting, considering my DMs with him. And then he was like, it's absurd, it's gross. And I agree that it's absurd and gross. It is absurd and gross. And we should be talking about police brutality, because police brutality doesn't just affect young black men. It affects the entire country. So we should have talked about police reform. We should have talked about police brutality. We should have talked about racial issues. We should have talked about all that during the BLM time. But hearing Milo say that is weird. I also find it weird that he said specifically N-word fatigue. It feels like he wants the attention for saying it, but he also wants the validation. Very weird. Yeah. I'm feeling a little off put by this. I'm finding this a little. This feels like he's trying to game his comeback.
To use a phrase like the one you just used.
I'm going to read this differently because Dr. Zaya said something weird. Black gentleman fatigued Milo's butt for years. Good God.
I don't think there's too much wrong with what I just said. I certainly don't wake up in the morning glad that the world is more full of hate. I'm a Catholic. So, you know, the most important thing to me is not.
So why would you
skin
use a
color, but
phrase like
it's,
the one
you
you
know,
just
context
used,
of
though?
character.
If you don't want to fuel that kind of
Well,
thing,
I don't think.
why
True.
would you use a phrase that you know
No,
is
but
so
we're speaking-
inflammatory?
Well, there are much worse versions of that. I was using a sanitized version out of respect for your program.
I doubt the average.
Uh,
I doubt the average black viewer watching this or African American who hears about that is going to see it that way.
It took Piers Morgan a second to catch it, but he caught it.
I think they'd rather be called what I said than have somebody who you know, than have white people kind of tied up in knots, not even sure whether they should call them African American or black, because these things are sort of, you know, used as a sort of ever-changing linguistic weaponry against you know, one racist society. Look, I mean, you can get waylaid and go down on a tangent about that if you want. What I was trying to explain in you know, an anthropological way, it was explain to you, you know, how people are feeling in America, and it's not just 22-year-old far-right racists that feel like this. It's not.
Well, I'm struggling.
Bro, Doobie says because Milo hates Muslims as much as Nick hates Jews. I actually do think that that's the difference between Gavin McInnes and Nick Fuentes, and arguably Milo Yiannopoulos. If you guys remember, so back when the Pulse nightclub shooting happened, Gavin McInnes and Milo Yiannopoulos came down to to Pulse nightclub, and they French kissed each other in order to protest the massacre of gay people. And by the way, like, that's lunatic shit. And I think at the time, I was more favorable to Gavin McInnes and Milo Yiannopoulos, but it was so wildly inappropriate to have like 50 murdered people who had just gotten carted off into the coroner's van. We as a community, Orlando, we were fighting over the first response. We were fighting because there were firefighters there right maybe a block north of Pulse nightclub is a firefighting station. And so people came to the firefighter station looking for medical aid and sanctuary from the mass shooter. And the firefighters locked the doors and forced the people to continue running towards the hospital, which was another few blocks away. And so there was like actually kind of like a fury with the firefighters that the firefighters like didn't help people open it up. You know, maybe if they had like a concealed weapons permit, like maybe defend the people or whatever. And so there was like a huge response about that. And then there was also a response about law enforcement's response, because on one hand, law enforcement was there and exchanging gunfire with the shooter within 3 minutes of the shooting. But because they couldn't get through the door, because there was like a front door to Pulse nightclub. And so there were 3 or 4 cops who were stacked on the outside of the door, and they were exchanging fire with the shooter inside the building. But the shooter was behind cover, so they couldn't hit him. And then while the cops were exchanging bullets, the guy would take turns firing at the door and then firing into the crowd, and then firing into the door and firing into the crowd, firing into the door and firing into the crowd. And so effectively, because the cops didn't press the threat, the bad guy was able to retreat into the bathroom, which still had like 15 or 20 people in it. And then he was in there for like 8 hours, and it was a hostage situation. And eventually, I think he executed almost everybody in the bathroom before SWAT finally blew the wall and killed him. So we were all breaking down in the wake of the Pulse nightclub. Everyone was analyzing the first response. Everybody was analyzing the way the firefighters responded. Everybody was analyzing the way the hospital responded, the way the cops responded. And so to have Milo Yiannopoulos and Gavin McInnes fly across the country and continent in order to make out in front of the location where people were just murdered, it was fucking weird. Okay. It was weird. It was attention seeking. It was inappropriate. It had nothing to do with like the local community or the desires of the local community. It had nothing to do with what we cared about. And so yeah, it felt gross and weird. Quick show, like the stream, share with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. We did set a goal of 10 super chats over the course of 2 hours. We have had 6 people participate in that goal. Wild QC John, Samson, Morally Neutral, aka K, Mr. Burian, Key Code, The Melody, Fell Runner, Old School, and Fell Runner have all donated so far today. I parasocially love you. Thank you for being here. And yeah, once again, I feel like all of Milo's criticisms of Nick Fuentes as a lost soul, I think, are true of Milo.
Struggling to do, if I'm honest with
moms.
you, Milo, I'm struggling to see where you are different to Fuentes, other than you speak in a posh English accent. I mean, you basically.
True, get him. Also, actually, hold on. We already identified the difference between Milo and Fuentes. Milo hates Muslims the way Fuentes hates Jews, and that's the difference. Hedonic Samuel says, are we doing Dinesh versus Destiny? Is it released, Samuel? There was some debate about that in chat. Yeah, of course. As soon as it's released, we'll break it down.
Basically agreed with everything he's been saying while saying, I don't agree with it.
How much time is left on the goal? Plenty, Fell Runner, and you already have done enough. Thank you for chipping. We still have 53 minutes left in the goal, and we got 4 donos left in order to meet the goal. So, Fell Runner, don't worry about it.
Good.
No, I mean, I think there's a big difference between somebody who is leaning into animosity and hatred of others, and somebody who is observing it happening, sympathetic about the origins, and lamenting the fact that it exists. I mean, I don't think the tone that I'm taking, irrespective of my accent, is anything like the way that Nick talks, and I think the comparison's slightly silly.
Well, because I think you can say
just because I can understand, because I'm empathetic to this group of people, and because I think that now and again they have a point about things, doesn't make me Nick. It means that I can perhaps understand that group a little bit, sort of see where they're coming from in some respects. And making friends with Nick was my intention was if I can have one foot in that world and one foot in the sane world of everybody else, maybe I could help bridge the gap there. It turned out not to be the case, because he's let's say not a bridge builder. But
what is it specifically you don't agree with him?
Isn't it?
What is it you don't agree with him about?
Jews.
Christmas is peak time for Ye. You represent him, I think, right? You work with him still?
Yes.
Well, thank you for that. We got 10 from Silent X Gaming 8490 just chipping in. These streams are amazing. Thank you kindly for the financial support and the words of encouragement. Deeply, deeply, deeply appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, Silent X Gaming.
I manage the lawyers, and I run this family office. Yeah.
And again, I would simply say this is a guy who, on the record, I would have asked him this if he hadn't walked out of our last interview, to get him to explain why he said these things. But only 3 years ago, literally 3 years ago this month, he praised Hitler, denied the Holocaust. I love Jewish people, but I also love Nazis. I do love Hitler. He posted an image of a swastika.
Grassroots says, hey, I oiled the ever-living fudge out of 5 channels yesterday, so I'm actually literally prohibited from donating. All right, take a break, Grassroots. Take a load off. Just hang out. Have fun.
Fused within a Star of David, which led to a second suspension from X for incitement to violence, and so on. Right? He then produced a song called Heil Hitler, which was banned from many platforms, and so on.
Which, weirdly enough, is very catchy. Eric Dom says, do you think transvestigating people who have Mar-a-Lago face would be successful to divide the right further? No, because they would accuse the left of being misogynistic in a way that the right is routinely misogynist, but it would be viewed as hypocritical by the left wing. And then also, I don't think it would be viewed as being done in good faith. I don't think, I think a lot of the right wing would be like, well, now you're just being ugly. And of course, they've been ugly before. But once again, you cannot hold groups accountable for hypocrisy. You can only hold individuals accountable for hypocrisy.
This is deliberate baiting of Jewish people in the most horrific manner possible. Again, I just ask you, are you comfortable working for him with that?
Well, of course I'm comfortable. I mean, he's an extraordinary human being. I mean, there's a perfectly good explanation for that, which he has given a number of times. You can find it plausible or implausible, as the case may be. But the way he explained it, and he did this on a live stream, it's readily available. He said, I want to perform Heil Hitler at the Grammys, because if I do that, those words will suddenly no longer have power. I will have conquered them. I will have drained them of all of their, I forget the expression he used, but I suppose I would say something, all of their, their toxic, hateful, or taboo energy, or whatever. The way he was articulating his artistic project in doing that, and some people will find it persuasive and some won't, was that was in terms of, like abuse survivors. We used to laugh at them 10 years ago when they had trigger warnings and safe spaces and little puppy rooms and stuff like that, because everybody knows that if you get raped or something terrible happens to you, the best way to put your life back together is exposure therapy, so that it doesn't become this sort of thing that that turns you into a blubbering mess every time you hear about it for the rest of your life. You just slowly kind of acclimatize back and get used to it. Ye seem to be taking a similar view about some words, phrases, and opinions that have had a stranglehold on our culture for a long time. And it's funny, he perhaps hasn't read, the Holocaust in American Life by Peter Novick, the Princeton academic, who explains how that particular historical event was sort of rebooted in the academy in the 1960s and formed the basis of modern, what we would call grievance culture and victimhood ideology that became BLM. But Ye sort of seemed to instinctively intuit that this was being weaponized and leveraged to stop people talking about other things, like Israel, for instance, or other things like the fact that one particular...
Really? So, sorry, real quick. Christian Lara says something interesting. Pretty sure the science is leaning away from exposure therapy. Why? And I'm asking because... No offense. I think there's some things that like conservatives intuit that might not be fully accurate, but is good for some people. Like exposure therapy, correct me if I'm wrong. Exposure therapy involves taking something that you have a phobia around or anxiety around and then exposing yourself to it over time. And I'll tell you guys, I did not like flying, hated flying. And I loved it as a kid, but I think seeing it during 9/11 and then traveling the world for the military, it just lost its allure. And all it became, as I became an adult, was getting into a steel tube doing 500 miles an hour and potentially exploding. Now, I knew the statistics on exploding were incredibly rare, but that didn't help the fact that I felt like it was entirely possible. And so I was terrified of flying. Of flying. And so what ended up happening was when I got out of law enforcement, I felt like I had used up all of my luck in law enforcement. And so when I started flying again, the first couple of times that I was on the plane, I was like white knuckling it. And I was having like vivid imaginations of like plane crashes. And I was effectively like getting adrenaline out, imagining like a catastrophic plane crash while I was in the aircraft. And it was horrible. But what ended up happening was I talked to the doctor about the anxiety issues. They gave me hydroxyzine, which basically makes it, chemically impossible for you to give a shit about anything. And so I take hydroxyzine, I chill out, I say, it is what it is. I get on the plane, I kiss my ass goodbye. And as a result, I can teleport across the United States of America for a few $100. So like, what's the beef? Because for me, I exposed myself over time to the point that now I'm considering doing like a transatlantic flight with the family eventually when I have enough money to do so, but a transatlantic flight with the family so they can travel Europe. And that would have never been possible if I hadn't like gradually exposed myself to short distance flights, and then eventually, biting the bullet and going longer. So I'm curious about that. Christian Malaris, in response, said, heard from a therapist that in terms of dealing with PTSD, there are more helpful, better treatments. I'll have to look into it. Well, hey, listen, if you want me to do mushrooms or ecstasy and then get onto an airplane, I'm fine with that. That sounds like a perfectly valid way to deal with my trauma. Ironside says, I work in the mental health field. Exposure therapy works, but like any other type of therapy, it's not appropriate with every person. That I can believe. I can believe that showing somebody who has a horrible phobia or trauma something that is horribly traumatizing can make them shut down and therefore no longer want to interact with the thing. And so they stop going to therapy. But I also think that gradual exposure to something that's terrifying and gaining intimate knowledge of that thing can allow you to overcome it. So yeah. Rob says the basic trick for long flights is Benadryl. Go to sleep. I mean, that's kind of what hydroxyzine is unironically a antihistamine. it makes you incapable of giving a shit about anything, and then it also makes you nappy. Mr. Birian says, I want Connor to take mushrooms for a stream. I mean, I would love to. I just don't know if I'm going to come back, you know? I would love to do mild hallucinogens. I just don't want to trigger a schizophrenic or psychotic episode. That's all. Anyways, back to Milo. Weirdly enough, in response to the content or whatever, I think that Piers insightfully pointing out that Milo's former attempts to instigate are comparable to Nick Fuentes. I think Milo pointing out that he feels like he had a different political core of instigating compared to Nick, and that Nick actually is based in white Christian grievance, resentment, and revenge. That point's well taken. I just think that Milo's a weird messenger. The message is fine. The messenger's weird. Christian Blair says, if I could get Bonnie Blue to my house for Christmas, Connor would have gotten, and he would not have gotten any super chats this year from me. Lol. I DM you about something, but let's just say that I'm not going to say anything. That Bonnie Blue might be more amicable to what you want than you think. That's the most sanitized way that I can say that. All right. Anyways, let's go.
Group of people were seemed to be all the managers in the entertainment industry, and they were systematically defrauding and screwing the black entertainers that they were managing. I mean, he's entitled to that view. He's entitled to that observation. And if it's right that his intention was to take this horrifying taboo, the greatest evil in history, as we're all told to call it.
What would you call it?
If it was his intention.
Well, ooh, Piers is getting he's getting his nose on for the dog whistles. Horse God says, okay, what about a boofing stream? I mean, I would love to boof, but I got kids, man. I got kids. I don't have time to boof. Macro dosing. Listen, guys, I'm going to be real. As long as I'm employed by another entity, the maximum you're going to get is probably a 6-pack. I'm just going to be real. All right. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them. We got 7 people who have got us towards the goal. We got 45 minutes left on the goal. The goal is 10 super chats over the course of 2 hours. 2 of our Oilers are knocked out. Okay. Christian Valeris has paid Bonnie Blue to come to his house for Christmas. So Christian Valeris is tapped out. What was it? Grasser Tegemon, our other Oiler, is he oiled too much yesterday. He went hard with the oil, and so as a result, he's out of oil temporarily. The oil pumps are pumping more oil as we speak. So if any heroes feel like they can chip in over the next 45 minutes, it would be great. It's never required. It's never required. It's greatly appreciated. Let's go.
Well, what would you call it?
Well, of course it was a monstrous and incomprehensible evil. Maybe Stalin was worse. Who cares? Like after a certain point, it's like it's just evil. We can't wrap our heads around, isn't it? If the way he was articulating at the time he gave that interview, and within a day of giving that interview, he was on a live stream and he said, "I want to sing Heil Hitler at the Grammys because after that, the words will no longer have any power." That's a bit more of a complex,
it's not complex. It's
project than you're giving him credit
Milo,
for.
Honestly, it's just a crock of shit. That's not why he did it just for attention. He didn't care about antagonizing and upsetting and distressing Jewish.
Val said, was Gavin and Milo making out in public outside of a gay massacre before or after Gavin stuck a butt plug up his ass on stream in support of the gay community? No idea, but they're approximately the same time for sure.
Jewish people worldwide. He's a massive entertainer with 33 million followers on X alone, as he reminded me when he did his little performative stunt with me. And the truth is that, all I've heard you do in the last 20 minutes is defend all these people from what I think are indefensible things they've said. And you've done it in a very sort of moderate sounding way. But I just think, I'd say this to Ye's face if he hadn't bottled it and run away. And I wouldn't have bought into it. He was
I think it's a real shame that the pair of you seem to have
doing all this stuff for some profound, complex reasons. No, he wasn't. He was just Jew baiting. He was Jew baiting and using Hitler
as I said at the beginning, some people are not going to find it plausible. I do think it's a pity that you two in your encounters with one another seem.
Wait, your B-word friend Pisco did that, by the way? What? He put a butt plug up his butt on stream in solidarity with the gay community? What are you talking about? What did Pisco do?
To have spoken past each other so much. You obviously haven't.
Last time I was prepared to do a lengthy.
Or did he kiss? Did he kiss a man in solidarity with the gay community? What did Pisco do?
I gave him. I did a 2-hour interview with him several years ago, which I thought was very illuminating, very enlightening. I was looking forward to doing the same thing with him the second time round, and he just bailed on me after 3 minutes because he obviously worked out it was going to be a publicity stunt.
Having had that conversation with him and having seen a little glimmer of what is clearly a remarkable intellect, albeit an unconventional one. I mean, you don't seem to give him very much credit as an artist, as a creative, as a provocateur.
No, just to be clear, he's one of the most talented. He's one of the most talented. No, hang on. He's one.
Listen, I'm not going to play it for the copyright, but Ninjas in Paris is amazing. There was some millennials. The wife and I went to a local Italian restaurant. It was phenomenal. Well, our anniversary is sometime soon, but we had limited time. And so we did our anniversary early, and we went to an Italian restaurant. And next to us was a French restaurant that had been rented out for a private event. And it was all like upper middle class, like millennials. It was like a high school reunion or something. And they were bumping Ninjas in Paris. And it was amazing. No, it was better than Olive Garden. We should know. Although my wife is a huge fan of Olive Garden, huge fan of Alfredo sauce, huge fan of the breadsticks. AKA Batusai, good to see a Sitch and Adam crossover person from the gift card snowman. Thank you kindly. We're up to 8 out of 10 super chats over the course of 2 hours. Thank you.
One of the most talented artists of my generation, without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt.
It's possible,
it's also possible to say that some of the stuff he's come out with in the last 2 or 3 years has been disgusting. And I would have said that to him to his face. And by the way, the offer remains. If you want to go back to him and tell him we've had this exchange, I don't expect you to answer for him. If he wants to actually have the balls to sit there and answer these questions to me for a sustained period of time.
Apparently, Grassroots, he says, I spent $100 million verbally abusing Pisco, and there's no expense I won't spare to remind Pisco he's bad and should be ashamed. So you oiled somebody to shit talk him? I mean, that's what Doobie does.
I will do that interview, but he didn't want to. He'd rather turn it into a little
something of an answer. Sorry, go on.
No, go on. Make your point.
Perhaps something of an answer to your frustration is the fact that he did sit down with an Orthodox.
I'm going to skip the last little bit. I don't care that much. Milo has lost some of his fire, unfortunately. Sacred Snow says, my wife's a manager at Olive Garden in Central Florida, and I love Olive Garden. And get it at the price of McDonald's. It's a miracle I'm not 100 pounds heavier. Sacred Snow, which one? Because if it's an Olive Garden off of Orlando Avenue, I'll have to drop by and say hello. Justin says, Milo's on drugs. Just look at his eyes. That's what I was going to say. His fire. A decade ago, he was on the ball. He was funny. He was charismatic. He would say wild shit. He would go crazy, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, he's lost his zest. He lost the pep in his step. It's unfortunate. He's on 1 HP. Yeah. Now, in Milo's defense, he has had a rough decade. He actually went from Bill Maher saying, "You remind me of a young Peter Hitchens." Is it Peter Hitchens or Christopher Hitchens? I forget. But the whole point is he had Bill Maher glaze him to his face as a aggressive, abrasive, funny, charismatic, dissident right-wing person. Then people fished for the clips where he said that it's common for gay teenagers to have relationships with adult men. and he seemed to endorse or at least favorably talk about his own gay experiences as a teenage boy engaged with older men. He got canceled. He got kicked off of Twitter. He got canceled from CPAC. He got alienated from a majority of the community. He fell into drug addiction and alcoholism. He lost, apparently he's like massively in debt, and he raided a shitload of charities in order to pay his bills. And so like a few of the charities that he claimed that he was fundraising in order to like create a white scholarship program and this, that, the other, all of those charities fell flat. They got raided. He probably raided those in order to pay his bills. He made this huge deal about how he was no longer gay, and he threw like $500,000 gay engagement ring into the ocean. And then ever since then, he's been claiming that he's not gay. Just within the past year, he said that he has a brain tumor, and it's pretty big, and it's like something that he doesn't know whether or not it's going to kill him. And so as a result, he's pretty... Grassroots says, I'm also happy to tell chat I'm going to fix my iPhone screen or your phone screen and will no longer be a shotgun of typos. We love your typos, brother. But that's okay. If you make it better, you make it better. But anyways, the point is that like Milo has had a rough decade. So I don't want to kick him while he's down on 1 HP, but I would like to see him return to his previously zesty self. Unfortunate to see the fall off. Uh-oh. Did I lose my YouTube chat? I lost my YouTube chat. Give me a second. It looks like we're still live. I still have an internet connection, but my chat said there's not enough memory to continue the page, and then it exited the chat. So let me zoom this out real quick. What is happening? Sorry, I'm trying to figure this out. How do I pop out the chat? All right, I'm going to exit this real quick. I'm going to give you a new one. I think I see another super chat coming in. Thank you. I think it's from Old School. Old School for 10 says, got to walk the 20 feet from my couch to my job, so I'm S-scene to pester, super chatting, to pester you again to play Cyberpunk, not for the lore, for the philosophical questions it explores, not for the lore, for the philosophical questions it explores, identity, ship of Theseus, etc. Okay. At minimum, Old School, I will check out because I might not have time to play the entire thing. I might not have time to play the narrative campaign, but at minimum, I could watch like a lore playthrough of it and then break it down as a part of my sci-fi series. Absolutely. Quick shout out, Counterpoints 40K, Counterpoints Sci-Fi, Counterpoints Star Wars. I am breaking down the wonderful world of science fiction and Star Wars, and we're having fun doing it. Let me pull up Valor Media Network because I just lost chat. So let me pull you guys up and see if I can reload chat real quick. And thank you. We are now at 9 out of 10 super chats over the course of 2 hours. And so as a result, we are 1 super chat away from the goal. Although, here we go. I think I got it. Pop out chat. Sorry for the technical delays, but you guys know I'm a boomer. It's no big deal. No big deal to be a boomer. All right. Anyways, thank you, Old School, and thank you for getting us so close to our goal. We are going to be moving into Steven Crowder. Then we'll be wrapping this. And yes, Old School, you did break the chat. We'll be watching Steven Crowder's response, and then we'll probably be picking different content. Maybe Muhammad Hijab versus Destiny.
I'm member of the Uncensored team, known as one of the first eager superfans to comment on my interview with Nick Fuentes, was Steven Crowder, the host of Louder with Crowder, who wrote on our YouTube channel, How to Not Conduct an Interview 101. And Mr. Crowder joins me now. Welcome to you, Mr. Crowder.
Thank you for having me, sir. Merry Christmas. Or do you guys say Happy Christmas? I've heard it both ways.
We do both. I'd be very happy to wish you a Happy Christmas and a Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Despite you impugning my qualities as an interviewer.
Fell Runner for the 5 gets us over the goal. Do Hanukkah history points. Okay, I'm actually gonna have to do some research for that. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, I'm gonna do this because Fell Runner has been excellent today. 3 super chats on the day, and also getting us over our goal. I'll reset the goal momentarily, but I'm gonna have to do some research on Hanukkah. correct me if I'm wrong. Hanukkah and the menorah, part of the lore was during a siege by the Romans, the Jews only had so much provisions, including candlelight, and effectively the candles were supposed to only last like a day or two, but they lasted like 7 days or something like that, or 9 days or 11 days or 13 days, however many sticks are on the menorah. And so the representation of the menorah is effectively like God's blessing to the Jews during a siege in which they should have ran out of provisions infinitely quicker than they did. But because of God's providence and his mercy, he effectively allowed the Jews to last longer during the siege. Why were the Romans so mean to low oil Jews? Right? You know, you got to be mean to the high oil Jews. The Jews are the ones with the oil. But anyways, that I need to do more Hanukkah lore reading before I dive any deeper. I just wanted to see if any Jews wanted to correct me on my understanding of the menorah. So I thought it was oil. Maybe it's oil. I don't know. Somebody tell me. A Jew, quickly. A Jew who actually paid attention in synagogue. Please correct me on my lore.
You did expand on this. You said Piers Morgan is a liberal at heart, which I think is probably right. So he spent the whole interview trying to gotcha his way through identity politics on a guy who already rejects the premise. I did think that was an interesting commentary, actually. I would start by saying I wasn't trying to gotcha him because...
Ooh. Horse God says flotation tank plus Birking conservative discussions really maximize the out-of-body experience. Dude, what if I set up an IRL live stream? We went into a sensory deprivation tank. I still want to do a sensory deprivation tank. Ooh. I might have to do that. I might have to do a sensory, because I think I could afford, because sensory deprivation tanks are not... Do you guys know about this? Has anybody ever shown you this before? Have you ever heard about this? Joe Rogan was big into it for a little bit. What they do is they make a tank that is soundproof. Sorry, I typed it. I combined all three words. Sensory deprivation tank. They put you in salt water that is skin temperature. Okay. And so what you do is you float there. And since you lose the sense of gravity, and since it's pitch black, effectively what you do is you trip balls. Okay. And so I don't know what this is. This looks crazy. But the whole point is you get into a sensory deprivation tank, it goes pitch black, and then the only thing that exists is what's in your imagination and your thoughts. And so effectively it's like, it's supposed to be a really deep and kind of effed up way to deal with like trauma and spirituality and religion and deep thoughts and relationship issues and all that kind of stuff, because effectively it just totally separates you from the world to the point that you're just effectively a floating consciousness. And so I think there's I'm not trying to dox myself too bad, but sensory deprivation Orlando. I don't think it's that expensive. Grassroots says I've done it. It doesn't work. Maybe you didn't try that hard, bro. Float 8 in Baldwin Park, total Zen float. The Drip Bar, Orlando, UCF, Forever Young Med Spa and Wellness. Okay, so I got 4 places. I'm not gonna lie, total Zen float sounds like the place I would want to go, but I'll check it out. I'll let you know. Anyways, sorry for the side thing. I think we could all benefit from sensory deprivation. Horse God says it can take 2 hours for your mind to finally let go. You have to book like 3 hours. I think you guys underestimate my schizophrenia. I feel like I would need 10 minutes to relax, and then I would let my schizophrenia fly.
Because I'd already made it clear I was going to put to him, I'd already said this publicly, I was going to put to him all the more contentious things that he has said, which have gained notoriety, and challenge him properly about it, which I think I did. I don't categorize that as a gotcha. He got very exercised about the story involving his father. And I said on an earlier panel we did that actually, if I had my time again, I wouldn't have named his father, although it's easily discoverable on the internet, but I wouldn't have done that. I would still have told the anecdote because, as I trying to explain to Nick Fuentes, the story was put in the public domain by Nick Fuentes about his father in a way in which you could only construe from it that his father made decisions when Nick Fuentes was young, which appeared to be racist decisions. And I was curious whether he felt he was a product of that environment. Now, he went nuts about that, and he's perfectly entitled to. And he's come after me and my family. Fine, he's perfectly entitled to do all that. I don't care. But I was curious why you felt that I was playing gotcha with him and not just actually, I think, doing my...
Vedsunil says, I'm drunk as fudge right now off of mead, multitasking my work with Connor while I appreciate in Zimbabwe. Also pizza. I don't know what Zimbabwe is in this context, but I'm happy to hear that you're getting day drunk off of mead and working.
my job as a journalist and just challenging him about the more contentious things that he said.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I don't think you challenged him on the most contentious things. And by the way, it's not an impugnment of your character. It's a different interviewing style, right? I think that trying to shame someone like Nick Fuentes for being racist, for being a misogynist, like that's a layup for him. He's already been accused of that, and I don't think it's very fruitful. I mean, I don't want to conflate gotcha.
Oh, a Zin. Okay, interesting.
With challenging. So I would say, by the way, yeah, if he's going after your family, Nick Fuentes, if you're watching, strongly condemn that from your audience if anything is happening out of line. But I also would say, when the guy makes a good point and says, hey, you know what, my dad's not here to defend himself. Could we move on from that? Don't do it 6 more times. But I counted 6 times, and you're not able to get to where you actually have disagreements. See, when I sat down with Nick and...
Okay, this feels like sweeping. This absolutely feels like sweeping, okay? What Piers Morgan was getting to at that moment, which I do feel like it's a low blow, but let's also talk about what was actually happening. Nick Fuentes said, when we were driving around in Chicago and I was a kid and we were deciding on where we were going to eat, my dad would never take us to Applebee's because there were too many blacks who worked there. And so what Piers Morgan said is, hey, you're a pretty racist guy. You're pretty race realist. So, you know, is it your dad and your mom who kind of encouraged you to be racist or race realist or misogynist? Because frankly, a lot of American families would find your speech and your behavior quite shocking. And so I'm trying to figure out like where you got these ideas and how you became what you became. And Nick was like, oh, you know, how, you know, my dad's not here to defend him, you know, to defend himself. And I'm not trying to say anything that gets him into trouble and blah, blah, blah. And Piers is like, okay, well, why'd you bring up the story then? Right. And that's where, Fatsimo says, I thought he said black fair, that's like where black people go. I mean, that's possible too. But then the thing about it is, I'm telling you, if I said what Nick Fuentes said on the internet, my mother would fly or drive cross country, grab me by the ear, walk me over to a sink, and wash my mouth out with soap. That would be my high 60-year-old mother's reaction to the kind of crazy shit that Nick Fuentes says. And my mom probably has to resist flying across the country and washing my mouth out with soap just through profanity, just through the crazy stuff that I say, just through the wild jokes that I say. So that's kind of where I think Piers is he's poking at something that's real. And so Steven's saying like, oh, well, he wears racism and misogyny like a badge of honor. Therefore, all you're doing is solidifying his points. And, you know, how dare you bring up his father multiple times? It's like, no. What we're trying to cut at is how did Nick get to where he got and why isn't his family attacking him? And the reason why his family might not be attacking him is because maybe they agree. Maybe they raised him to perceive the world that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, I played his clips back. People could argue that it was tedious, but I would play a 1.5-minute clip, you know, a 2-minute clip, because I wanted to show it in context. And I was able to actually lay out, we were actually able to contrast our policy, our prescription differences, where people know. And so I think if you go after, father being racist, I don't even know that you would construe his father's being racist because he doesn't like Applebee's. No one likes Applebee's. No one likes Olive Garden.
Hang on.
Number one, fuck you. Applebee's is like cheap TGI Friday. Number two, I don't like Applebee's because I do think the quality is like super mid and it's kind of like mid-tier pricing. So I don't go to Applebee's all the time. But if I was stuck in a town and there was no other restaurant, dude, Applebee's can slap. So Fuck you on that one, Steven Crowder.
Hang on. That's not what he said. He literally told the story that his father
Mhm.
didn't like that particular restaurant chain or others because they were known for black fare.
Oh, okay. Fatsimo's right. Fatsimo's right. It wasn't because the employees were black. It's because so many black people went to the restaurant. Got you. Vetsu Neal says Chili's is better than Applebee's. I agree.
Sure.
Well, that's racist.
Black fare. What if people don't like black fare as far as food? What if people don't want to be somewhere where they're more likely to end up in a World Star hip hop video? This is where we get to the issue of you and
That's that was a crazy response. Yeah, Little Caesars is delicious when you don't have a bitch in your ear telling you that it isn't. Send patriarch. Yeah, Applebee's hits when you don't have a bitch in your ear telling you that it's gross and it's black fare. Hold up. Okay, listen. I'll admit that I don't frequent Popeyes because it is stereotypically a disproportionately black restaurant, but I also don't like fried chicken and dry biscuits, right? Like, have you ever guys seen the dried biscuits meme where like I'm just gonna force somebody to commit suicide by forcing like 7 Popeyes biscuits down their mouth with no drink. So yeah, like obviously there's people who prefer different locations based off of different stuff. People are getting mad at the Popeyes comments. Bojangles. Yeah, Bojangles. I do not have no Bev. Yeah. Connor has worse food takes than Destiny. That is slander. That is slander. And when you start oiling again, I'm going to take some of your oil with which to sue you. I'm going to sue you with your own oil. But anyways, all right, hold on. Let's slow down. Is there a difference in racism between somebody who just hates people because they're black versus somebody who doesn't want to go to the movie theater on the black side of town because stereotypically and sometimes black folk are allowed during movies? Obviously, like hating someone because of their skin color versus not wanting to go to the movie theater on the black side of town, they're both arguably racist, but also in degree. Yeah, in degree, they're different. And so I think what we need to do, or what at least what I try to do, is if somebody says like, hey, that's a little racist, I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's a little bit racist. Okay. It's a little bit racist. But is this something that we need to be obsessive about, where we need to have like a social studies person with purple hair analyze like movie theater distributions and then create like a voucher system for people to go to different movie theaters outside of their domestic ethno-religious group? Probably not, right? And so we need to scale. And I think with the boomer generation in particular, and also Gen X, I suppose, saying somebody was racist probably since the 70s to the thousands was like an indictment of their character. It was like, you are a bad person because you are prejudiced. Whereas I think from the 90s to now, what's happened over time is they've tried to use it as an invective. They've tried to use it as an insult. But because the internet is so free for you to be able to say whatever you want and say wild shit about Popeyes, it just doesn't hit the same. It just doesn't hit the same. Raising Cane's. Now everybody's fighting about which fried chicken and biscuit joint is the best. You guys are making me me hungry right now. I'm not gonna lie. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. We're about halfway through the stream. I did reset the goal for 2 hours. We already had people be incredibly generous today, so I want to shout them out. Fell Runner, Old School, aka Batu Sai, Silent X Gaming, Well QC John, Samson, K, Mr. Burian, Key Code, Melody, Fell Runner, Old School, and Fell Runner. Thank you for the financial support. If you do have the ability to chip in and or oil, it's appreciated. 2 of our oilers are knocked out of commission. Unfortunately, Christian Valeris loves his family, and so he bought presents for his family. So, you know, that's tough for us. And then Grassroots Hegemon was talking shit to Pisco via thousands of dollars in super chats. So he's knocked out of commission. So if you're a chipper, you got an extra $2, $5, $10, whatever, appreciated. If you're an oiler, you got extra money burning a hole in your pocket, it's appreciated. If we don't hit the second goal, I'm not going to care. 2 of our biggest players are knocked out. So if you guys can chip, awesome. If you can oil, awesome. If you can't, I understand. It's the holidays. It's busy. Everybody's busy. Don't worry about it. Nits Online says, I actually love you, Connor. Good. I parasocially love you too. Thomas Martin says, learn to make your own fried chicken with nothing better than home. Have you seen that TikTok of the guy? And sorry, I'll get back to the content momentarily. But have you seen the TikTok of the guy where he's watching somebody make a homebrew recipe and he takes chicken thighs, drums, whatever. He puts it in egg, like egg yolk. He throws it in a batter. Then he deep fries it. And when he bites into the deep fried chicken, I swear to God, it sounds like paper ripping. That's how rich the fried chicken sounds. And the black guy who's reacting to the guy who's making the fried chicken recipe, his eyes roll into the back of his head in ecstasy. He passes out and falls off screen. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that TikTok, but I am a big fan of that TikTok. Blade says, Connor, just curious, are you committed to the Constitution and U.S. Republic dogmatically? Yes. Or if someone offered you an alternative model more effective for modern times, would you change or not? Depends on what their model is. I still believe in republicanism principally, but I would have to see a better model. Most people who are advocating against the constitutional republic model, they just want like dictatorship or new monarchy. Blade follows up with that comment. For example, suppose now, just for the argument that's the case in the age of social media, representative democracies cannot work in a divided social media world. Just assume then, would you want to change the system or are you committed to it intrinsically? I'm not committed. Okay. I said I'm committed to it intrinsically and dogmatically because I probably am. I can't think of somebody coming up with a better system than what we have right now that we're going to be able to change to easily. However, if you'll indulge me a brief rant, let's say that we realize that social media is being manipulated by nefarious characters and our representative democracy is not working the way that it needs to. I would have no problems with very large reforms. Let's say that we prohibited congressmen and House of Representative members. Well, I guess that's congressmen and senators, right? We prohibited congressmen and senators from trading in the American market. We tripled their salaries, and then we gave them 20-year term limits. And we said, your sole job, you will not be like, if you're interacting with members of the public or whatever, like we'll help you do that, I suppose. But realistically, it is your job to craft technocratic policy. And if you're not coming up with technocratic policy, that is more important than fundraising. Because right now, I think that congressmen and senators are spending half of their time to 3/4 of their time fundraising and getting elected, rather than focusing on crafting the technocratic policy necessary to push our society forward. Jen Winkler says senators are congressmen. Representatives and senators together comprise Congress. Well, thank you. Jen Winkler for 20. Thank you for the $20, Jen. Trump's unhinged post from today is finally getting criticism from his cult. Good. And F him.
When him discussing per capita. Right, let me ask you this. Like you're a Catholic. We were talking about this. You said you'd be happy to talk about it. What do you think is going to be fruitful in attacking a celibate Catholic for not getting laid?
I didn't attack
You're
him for
driving
it.
people into his arms.
I didn't attack.
Yes, you did, Piers. Own it. You bullied Nick for being an antisocial virgin. Let's be real.
Him.
He said he needs to get laid.
I think he does.
That's a heresy.
I think he does. I think he's an incel.
So you advocate heresy.
I think he's, well, I perfectly understand. If you're a devout Catholic, which I'm not, if you're a devout, I was brought up a Catholic and I was given spiritual guidance by Catholic nuns, and a lot of my family are very devout Catholics. I'm not particularly, but I still adhere to, broadly adhere to Catholicism, albeit there are parts of the teachings I don't agree with. So that's my position on it.
Okay, I've already done quad. I've been working out while hanging out here. I've already done quad extensions, leg extensions. I'm not going to do hamstring curls on stream because I think you guys would just look at me creepy. I am gonna do some calf raises though. So my apologies. If it seems like I stand up and I do a weird movement on screen, it's just because I'm doing calf raises.
But I can understand if he said to me, the reason I've never
But
had
then
sex.
why bring it up, Piers? Why is it relevant whether he's been late or not? Because I said in my interview
Because he's an antisocial freak, Steven. You already know this.
specifically, just so you know, I'll answer for everything I say. When I interviewed him, I said, I hate it when people use something that should be seen as a virtue as an attack. Out of all the views, if you view them as reprehensible, and I, by the way, strongly disagree with a lot of Nick's views, the least relevant is whether he's celibate as a devout Catholic. That's like a good thing. And so you actually give him the moral high ground. He says, hey,
had he said
my
to me,
dad out of it.
yeah, but hang on, you're putting up a better defense, if I may suggest, than he did. Because had he said to me, I'm a devout Catholic, and the reason I haven't had sex is because the Catholic Church forbids that and says you should be married before you have sex. Perfectly reasonable answer. That's not what he said. He never said that at all.
So you didn't do your research because he said that literally dozens
He
of
may
times.
have said it elsewhere. He didn't say it to me. I only asked him about that stuff because there is a view that he is what they call an incel, and that he whips up that kind of mentality, and that's why he's such a misogynist about women and so on. It's an interesting thing to ask him. He seemed to me quite happy to answer it all. He was quite emphatic in his answers. Fine. I didn't see that as an attack. I was joking about getting laid because it seems to me he's a very angry guy.
Can I jump in for a second here?
Yeah.
Because this is where I think this is important, right? His audience will. People out there, by the way, some who are voluntarily celibate because they're devout Christians, but also if you look at the dating pool out there, I don't think it's misogyny to say, I wouldn't date one of those young women if they were growing on my ass. And they're actually out there living in a world that's been created. They will identify you as someone who's helped create that, right? Someone who says, I don't care if the UK no longer looks white. I don't care if we lose our cultural identity. Hey, it's great, women's rights. And they're looking at their prospects. And when you say, hey, you're celibate or whatever it is, you haven't gotten laid, you're an incel. Guess what? You give him the moral high ground. When you say, hey, what about your dad? And he asks you, and I will say, he asked pretty respectfully, don't do that. You go on 6 more times. What did you ask about Stone?
Because I thought what he was
You
doing.
said little twerp.
Yeah, no, I hear
You
you.
said little twerp.
Stephen, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, honestly, I'm not, because I've got a lot of respect for you. I think that
Well, thank you.
I think what he tried to do, he tried to.
Sorry for being out of breath just for lifting a few weights. Nick is not an incel. He is a volcel. Voluntary celibate versus involuntary celibate. Nick could get laid if he wanted to. Nick has women in his messages who probably want to steal his virginity card, who probably want to date a multimillionaire, even if he's skinny and tiny and twinky and he has spider fingers. Nick could still get laid. So he is a volcel. It is stolen valor to say that he is an incel.
I think he was taken aback when I revealed that anecdote about his father. And I think he didn't want to address what he actually said on air with that anecdote because it's pretty damning when you hear it. And I think he decided very quickly, because he's a smart, quick operator, to turn it into me attacking him about his dad who wasn't there and how disgusting and blah, blah. And that's fine. But I kept trying to bring him back. I kept saying, look, it's not an attack on your father.
To his dad.
Well, I wasn't attacking.
Andy says, I don't agree with age limits. Age discrimination is a protected category. If the 98-year-old wants to run their chance, that's fine by me as long as they fit the term limits. Sure. But 20-year term limits. That's fine by me.
Attacking his dad. I was saying,
especially if the 98-year-old can convincingly get elected from the electorate.
If you tell a story which looks to the world when they hear it that you're saying your father was racist, can that have an influence on you as you grow up? That was the question I was making. I didn't want him getting off the hook of answering that question about his environment. Good
point, Jen Winkler. Jen Winkler says, y'all go look at Hutch's monstrous gun. True. Let's do that real quick. So Hutch did a community post where his father bought him a gun. He's showing it on stream. You should not be showing a firearm on stream, by the way. Like there's actually a community. We shoot on site. Okay, look at this. So Hutch is live. This is a Colt Anaconda. Okay. It's a Colt. This is like a $1,200 to $1,500 gun, and it is beautiful. Look at this. I'm gonna get in trouble for showing his community post, but look at this. So, anyways, my dad bought me an enormous revolver. I think this is .357. I thought that this was going to be a Taurus because a Taurus is like really cheap, and you can find they're effectively Colt clones, right? But Colt has this iconic cylinder release right here. And I was like, no way. Like, did his dad get him a Colt? Then I saw the horse. Then I looked at the barrel, and the barrel says Anaconda. And dude, this thing looks like a 6 or 7 inch barrel. This looks like a 7-inch barrel Colt Anaconda. And look, counterpoints. You're never allowed to get rid of that. Colt Anacondas are iconic and expensive. 40 likes. Sun Patriarch says, I want it hanging in the background on stream, possibly. Dude, I'm not going to lie. Grassroots, it's a 44. I thought Kay said it was a 45. Lol. Dude, if it's a Colt Anaconda 44, that's nasty. That's a nasty piece of equipment. So, yeah, anyways, one of the things that annoyed me about this, I'm sorry that we're going into a side tangent. But somebody was like, ha, 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 that's so cool. But it sucks that your dad just tripled your chances of dying. And it's like, okay, the only way that he's going to die is if he shoots himself with it. See, your chances of dying inside the home just went up. This person said it. It's beautiful forgetting that he just tripled your chances of dying by that thing. I always thought that was a crazy statistic. Listen, and go Todd, go. Like, I'm not trying to be too mean about it. I know like liberals and progressives, that's the way that they're going to think about it. Oh, you have a gun in your home, therefore you're just tripling your chances of dying by it or something like that. Well, yeah, no shit. In order to kill yourself with a gun, it probably increases your chances of dying by a gun if you have a gun in the home. That's probably statistically true. But at the same time, don't shoot yourself and you're fine. Yeah, a lot of people noticed the BioShock tattoo too. So yeah, so Hutch got incrementally slightly more based.
Heard him in his own words.
See, Horse God has the right attitude. I have 6 guns and I still have most of my fingers. See?
A story out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, here's the thing. In trying to keep him 6 times, and that's what I counted on the hook for his dad maybe being a...
Yeah, big in gaming. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth and all the excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. Listen, that whole scene, you guys want to know how I think I could really blow my shit up? Okay, so I think that Counterpoint Star Wars and Counterpoint Sci-Fi are going to do just fine. It just takes time to build channel momentum. So I think those channels in the long term, as long as I keep grinding out the content, I think those are going to do just fine. I think creating a channel called Counterpoints Crime and breaking down law enforcement stuff would be fire. People love, especially fictionalized law enforcement stuff. I think that would be fire, and people would probably love that. And with Dirty Harry and a lot of action movies, there's scenes where people are like counting gunshots, and that's like a core component of the scene. I'm just going to tell you right now, 99% of people who have been in gunfights, their adrenaline is so through the roof, they will not remember how many shots were fired. Like it's not really a thing. It's more of a movie thing than a real life thing.
Racist. Look, if your dad's in the Klan, it couldn't be relevant. It has nothing to do with the price of tea in China, right? What hook?
Well, it is if you openly admit to being a racist.
Hold on, asking him about Stalin. And I say this because the last time I was on your show, remember we were talking about Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
And by the way, I would hope that you would be just as hard on Candace and people like Tucker for some of the things that they've said.
Sure.
I think it's fair to be even-handed across the board.
Yeah, I agree.
Stalin, I said I would like to ask him about that, right? Is he a fan? Is he actually an admirer? Or does he just mean to say he's fascinated? What did you ask? You asked him about his dad 6 times. You attacked him as and I don't mean attack him. You present him, but racist, misogynist, right? Stuff that he already knows. That's the playbook. You'll drop.
Oh, and Grassroots says a sensory deprivation tank with 300 sheets of acid. Is that from SLC Punk, where the guy is like running around town with acid, but he gets hit by a sprinkler, and so he has a total freak out because he effectively does 300 tabs of acid? I forget that one.
Drive your fans into his own arms. What was your question on Stalin?
Well, I asked him.
There wasn't one.
Well, there was actually.
There wasn't one.
No, you're missing.
There wasn't.
No, there was. You just didn't hear it. So I actually brought on a British journalist called Danny Finkelstein, who spent 90 seconds in a video.
Interesting. Conservative liberalism says, I mean, this sounds like a myth to me, but I don't know. Maybe it's true. People in World War II counted their Garand shots because they'd prefer manually reloading whenever possible before the 8th round made their gun go ting, announcing to the enemy that they had to reload. That's kind of crazy. Also, guys, I know that not all you guys watch Valor Reacts or whatever, but in Valor Reacts, I was talking to Dan Pace about, you know, in a gunfight, what kind of ear protection do you wear, et cetera, because I was thinking to myself, like, communications during a gunfight has to be tough. And Dan, to my shock, bear in mind, we served in the military at the same time, but because I always trained, I always wore ear pro. I was never in a real gunfight, right? And so Dan was like, yeah, we just didn't wear ear pro. Dude, they're just running around shooting machine guns with they don't have cigarette butts. They don't have the little rubber ones. They don't have the little orange ones. They don't have earmuffs. Nowadays, they have the digital earmuffs. But apparently, everybody in World War II was just raw dogging it, dude. They were just raw dogging M1 Garands going off feet away from their heads. Absolutely wild.
Video talking about what Stalin and Hitler had done to his family. I did it in the context of him saying Hitler's cool, but Stalin was addressed in that, and he was totally dismissive of a Jewish man talking about his family being annihilated by Stalin and Hitler.
Do you hear yourself?
I don't know if this is true or not, but Andy B says, last time I was in the sensory deprivation tank, I hallucinated so bad I threw up and got banned from the company. All right. I need to pay attention to this, though, because why is Steven Crowder moral frogging Piers Morgan for moral frogging Nick Fuentes about Stalin and Hitler? Why is this? Why do we have a conservatarian, normie conservative right winger who is moral frogging a Trump apologist, contrarian right winger about moral frogging Nick Fuentes? What is happening?
Do you think that that's going to be effective or fruitful?
Well, it wasn't.
A guy named
It wasn't.
Finkelstein? No, it wasn't.
Fatsimo says, I think he's very much fucking a monster. That was a good clip from the Nick Fuentes debate.
Wasn't. You didn't ask me. Let me read you what I asked him about Stalin. Okay, because I think a lot of people, you responded saying it was softball. Did you watch the
Weirdly enough, I might agree with Steven Crowder in the next 30 seconds.
whole interview that I conducted with Nick?
Well, before you read what you're about to read, let me play a little mashup of you interviewing Nick Fuentes, and you can respond to this. Hang on.
Okay, but did you watch the whole interview?
Yeah,
Nick Fuentes, do you hate all Jews, sir?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you consider yourself an anti-Semite, a noted anti-Semite?
No.
Okay. Clears that up. Do you believe that white people are superior to all other races on the planet?
No.
Okay. Do you want to eradicate all non-whites from the United States?
No.
Okay. Well, Barry Weiss will be very happy to hear that. No doubt she's watching. And then because this happens a lot, right? It's Tucker did this with you. Fed. Nick Fuentes, are you in fact a Fed?
No.
Okay.
I got to say, mate, that's one of the most forensic examinations of interviewing masterclass I think I've ever seen. I mean,
yeah, Corbin Sales. Corbin Sales is available. I forgot. We're supposed to talk at 1. Thank you for the dono, by the way. Let's wrap this and then talk to Corbin for an hour. I got Ali, I got Ninja, I got Reason Riffs, I got Corbin. Corbin, I'm not going to click on it just yet. Can I have, it looks like it goes into a clash, but honestly, I'll just watch this forensic interview segment and then I'll wrap it and put a bow on it and then we can hang out.
the follow-ups were magnificent.
Nick,
Magnificent.
Piers, did you watch the whole interview?
No.
No, you didn't. Okay, so one of us came here quite a bit more prepared, which seems to be your approach with Nick. So let me read you my exact question on Stalin. Those were layups specifically because, again, I think you and I both agree, right? We want to have reasonable discussions. You don't want to radicalize people.
I agree.
Get rid of the bull crap on the outset so that we could actually get to real differences. And I think here's something that I really pursue when I interview: truth and understanding. I asked him about Stalin. Let me read you the exact question later on. It would help if you watched the whole interview. I said, my question to you would be, I know that you've said we want a Catholic theocracy or a Christian theocracy. I've heard the word dictatorship. Correct me if I'm wrong. I would ask you, since the end point seems similar to where Stalin would want us to reach, swap atheism for Catholicism. Would you be able to name, or is there any one thing that you think America concretely should copy about Stalin's rule or revolutionary methods to get there? And guess what? We were able to actually answer. We were able to actually discuss it. How many retractions on your show? 0. Quite a few on mine. How many times did we actually get into discussions regarding where we disagree? And let me tell you where I disagree with him. I'm to the right of him on some issues. I'm definitely to the right of him economically. He's a pretty big sort of centralized economy guy, but we did it in good faith. And I presented him with his own questions. We got that out of the way. If you don't watch the whole interview, yeah, you can take 15 seconds. Did you get to any, that was my question. And yours was, well, you never asked about Stalin. He said, do you still think Hitler is fucking cool?
Yeah.
How'd that work out for you? What'd you learn?
That he does.
And that's new? That he thinks they have nice outfits? They're Hugo Boss.
No, but okay, he didn't say that as his reason.
Did you learn about Stalin, Piers? Did you learn about
I learned this about Stalin.
Disenfranchised?
As I said to you, I played a clip from a guy who literally lost family members, close family members, to Stalin and to Hitler.
Sure.
And Nick Fuentes' response was to mock him and then to unleash his groypers on this guy who've been now mercilessly abusing and mocking him about the loss of his family members to Stalin and Hitler for the last 48 hours. Now, you might think that's acceptable, or that somehow I didn't push that hard enough.
This is what legacy media is done. You can't compete. Look, guys like Nick, guys like Andrew Wilson on your show, they've come up. I mean that you were at CNN, HLN for a very long time, and you're still following the same format. And so there, accusing someone young of being racist is a win. But with people who've grown up being accused of racism, of misogyny their whole life, they don't give a shit. And so you should get to the point where you can actually understand. Here's the one thing I would say that would help. Listen. You weren't listening to the guy, so you're not even able to lay out where you disagree and your own.
Okay. I do think this is a sweep job by Steven Crowder. I do think that he's trying to steelman the Groypers, so the Groypers feel like he's defending them, and therefore they can watch Steven Crowder without feeling guilty, even though he's a boomer millennial fogey who doesn't understand all their stuff. But at the same time, like, I think this is okay advice. You know? The Groypers, if you just show up and you're like, you're racist, the Groypers are going to be like, yeah. You're like, you're sexist. And they're going to be like, yeah. Or like, you want authoritarianism so you can implement your ideology. They're going to be like, yeah. And then boom, the conversation goes nowhere. Whereas I think as far as, of course, I'm going to cite the mystic P.F. Young, wealth inequality, rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, and dissolution of the social fabric, in my opinion, that is what's motivating the Groypers to have the politics that they have. And so the only way that you can really address those things is by having deeper conversations about whether or not their descriptions of reality are even accurate and whether or not their prescriptions are even good. Because when you just go to invectives and insults of, you're a nerd, you're a virgin, you're a nerd, you're a virgin, you're antisocial, you're a piece of shit, you're racist, you're sexist. All you've done is you might have socially castigated and marginalized them, which I guess could be good for broader society, but then you've socially marginalized and castigated them in such a way that all that happens is they find other alienated guys to hang out with. You're not bringing them back into the fold. You're not making them socially productive young men who are going to be good for America. You've just pushed them off to the side and radicalized them. So while I am critical of Steven, I do think he is sweeping that way he can capitalize on Nick's audience. I also think that his criticism of Piers Morgan and his approach is sound. I'll see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Bye for now. Let's fight about this tomorrow.